I'll roll with story number 3, actually, and then we'll read your comments and we'll see if you want a little visit from Makarif the cat. Our next story takes us to Kirkland, Washington, and the story of Bobby Jones. Bobby Jones is a 13-year-old that identifies male, is transgender, and is a very avid soccer player. And with that, we're going to let Cairo tee up the story a little bit.
Bobby Jones says he wants to play boys soccer as a trans athlete.
For rules to be more inclusive for everybody.
He and his family first spoke to Cairo 7 in September and said they wrote to the Puget Sound Premier League asking to play in games.
You have to stand up for what you believe in or change is never going to happen. We reached out to the Titans and they were really supportive.
But the Titans play for the Puget Sound Premier League, and turns out that league has a policy saying players must play on teams of their same sex.
On this day, Jones is getting support from a former top-flight MLS captain. Jones met Brad Evans on this rain-soaked soccer pitch and renewed his call to play for the boys' team Titans FC in the Puget Sound Premier League. It now appears the league is willing to let that happen. Today, the president of the Puget Sound Premier League said the league will allow Bobby Jones to compete in games and issued a statement saying the Puget Sound Premier League does not discriminate on the basis of gender identity or gender expression.
So there you have a little bit of the story. Now, we interviewed Bobby's mother, Eleanor, and we're going to go ahead and run a little clip from that interview. We will have the entire interview available tomorrow. It runs for 30 minutes. We have a very in-depth conversation with her, and she explained a little bit more of what's going on in the situation. And then I'm going to follow up with a little more information, because the Cairo story was done after we had done our interview yesterday. So there was an update and a little bit of a change. However, in that Cairo clip, things aren't exactly what they seem with the soccer league. And we'll get into that more. But with that, let's get into that interview with Eleanor. We are here today with Eleanor Jones, and we're here to discuss with her son, Bobby Jones. With that, Eleanor, I'd like to thank you and welcome you to the studio, virtually, of course.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me today. I am so privileged to be here and to share my son's story.
Tell us a little bit about your son's story, Bobby, and the journey that Bobby has taken.
So our oldest son, Bobby, is 13 years old. About a year ago, Bobby disclosed to his father and I that he is transgender and was interested in making the transition. He wanted the transition to carry over to his sports. Bobby plays for a soccer club called Titans FC out of Bellevue. So we contacted the Titans earlier this summer and asked them about making the transition. The Titans were really supportive of Bobby's request and wanted to do everything that they could on their part to honor that. So they did inform us that while they could put Bobby on the boys' team, because the club is governed by a broader league, the Puget Sound Premier League, that league has policies in place that do not allow transgender players to play on the teams that they identify with.
So what is Puget Sound's Premier League stand on this? What is their basis for this, for their decision, I should say?
So the basis is their a very brief, again, outdated policy that said girls will play on biological girls teams and boys must play on biological boys teams. There's no mention of transgender player or gender identification for players. So that's what they are falling back on.
Have they been willing to have a dialogue or a discussion at all?
The only dialogue that they have engaged with me in was an original dialogue when we reached out this summer, and they said through email that their policy was in place and they weren't going to be changing it anytime soon.
How is Bobby handling all of this?
Well, I think for many, sports is an outlet where we, get to put aside and enjoy the love of the game and the players and the sport and the competitiveness. But for my son, every time he runs on the pitch, he has to worry about whether or not he'll be able to participate on game day with his teammates. And so it has put, I feel, unnecessary stress on him. He's just 13. And all he wants to do is play with the guys that he practices with.
If somebody was watching this and they wanted to start their educational journey, is there a particular website or article or video that you would say, start your journey here?
So, Disclosure is a great documentary on Netflix that really talks about how transgender people have been portrayed in movies, and that would be a great start. It's produced by Laverne Cox, the actress. Another great resource, and it's a local resource, is Trans Families. That's been an amazing resource for me, for Bobby. Their director, organizer, creator, Aiden Key, is an amazing advocate.
And if somebody is watching this and they wanted to get involved in supporting Bobby in a positive way, how do they get involved?
So on my Facebook page, I have we've been using the hashtag Let Bobby Play, and so if you check that out, you can see kind of where our journey has gone so far. Also, my family has printed signs for yard signs and masks that say Let Bobby Play, and so I've thrown out there the invitation to reach out to me on Facebook, and we can mail or make deliveries for that. And then, another option could be, and we've had allies and friends and family do this, is to simply get in contact with the Puget Sound Premier League and those who are in the organization, and just let them know that they, they've heard about Bobby's story, and they hope that the league will refine its policy moving forward.
So let's follow up a little bit here. Puget Sound Premier League and the Cairo story, where we ran that little snippet, announced yesterday that they are going to let Bobby play. However, it's not exactly what it appears on the surface. What occurred is they notified the league, the Titans, that they were essentially going to issue a waiver to enable Bobby to play for one season. Now, of course, it's questionable if they'll have play in this season because of C disease and the restrictions that are in place right now. The waiver does not address their standing policy of essentially biological boys play with biological girls and biological girls play with biological girls. The other thing it does is it doesn't address what happens next season. And then the third thing it does is that if another transgender player wanted to come out or wanted to play in the league, this singular waiver does not enable that player to play. So the leagues stand that they're doing something good, and they don't have, I say this carefully because we don't have the league to defend themselves here, but it's kind of disingenuous to say that, we don't have a discriminatory policy. You can watch the entire interview tomorrow. It's 30 minutes long. It's all nice and polished and edited, just like what you saw there, so it's not raw. And I really, really want to thank Eleanor for coming onto the show and supporting us and giving us a chance to amplify their voice. The other thing I want to mention is we mentioned in that interview that we'll release tomorrow that there's going to be a companion story to this in the Seattle Gay News that would also going to be published tomorrow. The editorial staff of the Seattle Gay News decided not to publish that story at the last minute. There are some reasons within the Seattle Gay News on why that decision is made. It has nothing to do with Bobby, nor does it in a roundabout way have anything to do with the journalists that wrote the story. We did not write the story. Again, it was issued as a companion piece. I want to say on the record that we as an organization are very disappointed that the Seattle Gay News has made the decision that they have made and have made the decision to pull this story. And we are hopeful that this story will be in next week's issue. And with that said, the last thing I want to close with, my personal views here, I do feel, and this has been a journey for me. I mean, if 2020 has been anything, 2020 has been a journey for me. But I do feel, and I have felt for a while, that things like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, boys soccer, girls soccer, I'm like, oh, why? I don't understand. And there are other sports that are co-ed intramural, where people don't even bat an eye. So like one that immediately, right, in tennis, there's mixed doubles in tennis, and there's mixed doubles in tennis in a competitive nature, and that is a professional sport. Another sport that immediately comes to mind is curling. Now, people in my national audience who may not be into curling's actually really big in the Pacific Northwest. There are a ton of curling leagues. And of course, in Canada, it's very huge, and it is an Olympic sport. And it is another example of a sport that is co-ed and people don't even bat an eye. I am actually quite frankly surprised that we have not seen, say, a relief pitcher that's female come up through the farm leagues in the MLB, at least into AA or AAA. I am really surprised that we have not seen a place kicker or a extra point kicker in football. Same thing, not come up and at least be considered in professional football at this point. I think there's actually other positions that women could play in those two professional pro sports. Those two just come immediately to my mind as low-hanging fruit. And then even if we back away from on field, if we start looking at things like coaching, trainers, there is still this incredible barrier for women in these sports and for co-ed opportunities. And when you get into this whole issue of transgender, and then what is male, what is female, what is identification, and why does it matter? It just puts things into a place. Bobby is a 13-year-old that is super grounded and really knows what they want. And we think you should let Bobby play. And with that, we're going to go to